It's Entrepreneur App episode 22 with Brett, Regan, and David Brickley. We're on Facebook Live.
Yes,
we're on YouTube. We're on iTunes. We're on, what's the third one? Oh, SoundCloud.
We're everywhere.
But we're here with Jack Haldrup.
Yes, founder and CEO of Dr. Squatch, Natural Men's Soap, amongst other things. Jack, thank you for being here today.
My pleasure.
What's going on, man? So we all met, once again, kind of like Chris, all joined the local entrepreneur organization, EO, which there's a lot of chapters throughout. But let's talk a little bit about your company and what got you into the company.
Totally. Yeah. So Dr. Squatch, I'd say our mission is to basically convince guys that they should use more natural personal care products. So we started out selling soap, and we've kind of expanded that into shampoo and conditioner, cologne, some shaving products, and we'll continue to expand kind of to take over the guy's bathroom.
Okay.
Take over the world.
So I think we're always interested when we hear about a company of, how did you get there? Mm-hmm. So we want to take it all the way back to childhood and hear a little bit of, what was your upbringing like? What formed you to be the type of person to start a soap company? So what was your upbringing like?
Yeah, it was very like easy. I grew up in New York. I was like very into nature. Like I learned to ski and like be outdoorsy like at a really early age. And then I moved to Indiana, and most of my childhood was spent there. And that's actually where I started the company. And I think I always kind of definitely always had an entrepreneurial spirit. Like I always knew that I wanted to own my own business and just kind of have control of my life at a pretty young age.
So this is early when you're like 7, 8, 9, like you feel like, or like, what do you want to do?
Not quite that early.
Yeah.
Like I think at that point I probably, there was a point when I was a child and I wanted to be an astronaut. I went to like this museum where I got to fly like a simulation for a space shuttle.
Okay.
And I thought I think that no matter what, you were going to be successful, but like we landed, and so I thought I was like, destined to be an astronaut after that.
I don't think I've ever asked you, what was your thing?
That I wanted to
9 or
be?
10 years old. Was a baseball player for a while?
I think I was really into baseball, but I was also, I was doing some studio singing at that point.
Oh, that's
in time.
right.
So I thought I might have been an artist of some sort.
Nice. Yeah, I was into basketball, but I realized pretty early on that I was pretty short in athletics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gave up on that dream.
Talk about your parents for a little bit and how they influenced you to the guy you are today, your mom and dad, and your upbringing.
Yeah, that's a good question. My dad was an entrepreneur for a while, and actually I think that definitely put an impression on me early on. He started a tech company in the 90s.
Company?
A tech company to basically provide internet to local businesses. This was back when people were using dial-up, and like DSL and cable internet were just starting to come on.
Wow.
So he's providing high-speed internet to local businesses, and so seeing him do that definitely inspired me. At the time, I started learning HTML. I built my own computer. Like I became a huge like tech nerd, and he started his company with one of his best friends, and I kind of like always had that idea in my head that I wanted to do that at some point.
I talk about the importance of that all the time because when I was young too, I think at 5 years old, my mom put a computer in my hands, and you think back to like just people that don't have that fortunate ability to have those type of tools, but when you grow up with it, it just makes it so much easier to
absolutely.
To do more
You learn so much from that experience, and knowing how to operate a computer. Like everything is a computer today, so that was super valuable experience.
So were you a good student? Did you enjoy school? What were your topics?
Yeah, I kind of like was on and off. Like I tried really hard and did really well when I felt like I needed to, and then I slacked off when I felt like I could get away with it.
Yeah.
So it's probably like a little bit of the entrepreneurial gene there. I did well in classes that interest me, like math and science and that type of stuff. And then I would have periods where I would slack off and get interested in other things.
Especially at the high school level, I feel like you can pretty much get a B if you do all your homework and just flunk the test.
Yeah,
like,
and I
would
pretty
never
much
study.
I got into college pretty early on. Like I stayed in state and like got some scholarships, and so like I knew where I was gonna go. So like senior year, like I skipped class a lot. And
this is high school in Indiana at this point?
Yeah.
Okay.
I skipped class a lot to help my dad like do remodeling around the house.
That's funny.
So.
Okay.
So what do you think of the whole, at that point, high school, middle school education experience where you...
I was pretty lucky. I went to a very good public school in Indiana. That's like, it's called Carmel, Indiana. It's like always on those lists of like best places to live. So we had a very good public school system. I got to be a part of this marketing program that was very entrepreneurial oriented. So we actually ran, in the school we ran like a snack shop, and we ran every Christmas season like a retail store for the local community to come in and buy gifts for their families, and then all the money that we made was donated to charity. But we ran the entire store, like, from buying the products to setting like the pricing and like running the operations of the store. So getting experience to that was definitely like foundational in terms of my experience of wanting to become an entrepreneur.
And then where do you go to college?
Indiana. So
Okay.
I got accepted
Hoosier.
into the business school, and Indiana, Bloomington.
And Mark Cuban, Hoosier as well?
Absolutely. Yeah, he's kind of our idol.
So you were, how was the basketball team back then? Because that's pretty rough. while you were there.
It's been a while, man.
Yeah, since
we had some ups and
Isaiah
downs.
Thomas.
We went through a lot of scandals with the Kelvin Sampson era.
That's right. Yeah.
During that time, and kind of had a bottoming out point. So I didn't, I had a couple good years, but most of the teams weren't too good.
So once you get into Indiana, what is your major? And what, at that point, are you thinking of the long-term goal? I want to start this thing myself.
It's a great story. I entered into business school thinking like, okay, eventually I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to have my own business. So like, it makes sense for me to go to business school. I'm going to learn like about businesses and like how to operate businesses. When you actually get into school, in retrospect, you're actually basically getting trained to become an employee at a large company in their business division or whatever. So, I decided to become a finance major, mostly because it was like, I felt like it was a challenging major and I felt like I could get a good job from it, not because I had any specific passion around finance. And, so I went down that path, and I kind of got brainwashed into thinking that if I didn't leave and go into like investment banking or working for some consulting firm, then basically I was a huge failure and that like my school wasn't worth it. So I basically adopted the mindset that I had to go get one of those types of jobs at all costs.
Now, I always like to ask, school's expensive. There has to be some sort of ROI. Were you in a position where you were shouldering the entire load for school? Did you have some help? Did you have financial aid?
Yeah, so in undergrad, so staying in state definitely helped. It was pretty low cost, and I had some scholarship, and then my parents were very fortunate to pay for my undergrad, and then I actually chose to go to grad school. My official story was that like I wanted to become learn this IT stuff, go into IT consulting, but in reality, like I just wasn't ready to leave college, and I wasn't really happy with my job prospects from getting my undergrad degree. So I chose to pay for all that myself and attend graduate school. It was a 1-year program after my 4 years.
And what was the actual degree in grad
Masters
school?
of Information Systems.
Wow.
Okay.
Sounds more impressive than it is.
So you were actually at that point thinking you may, from an IT standpoint, you may run a whole team at a large company, or?
So the IT thing was basically, the degree was, okay, you had this business degree for your undergrad, and then you're going to add this IT piece to it. So it's a focus on like IT, like a little bit of tech skills, but more on the kind of like IT management side. So how can we use like technology to kind of transform or leverage business? And so basically most people went from that degree into some type of like IT consulting role, which is what I did.
So when you look back at the higher education experience, do you think it was a game changer? Do you think it was?
Yeah, I learned a lot of really good skills, which I don't want to diminish. I think especially grad school taught me how to think in terms of frameworks and how to think like big picture and to create plans and follow through. A lot of soft skills, doing presentations and interacting with people. But I think for me, it basically took me off this path that I kind of was destined to go on. And so
Gotcha.
if anything, like I think it just kind of delayed me to get to where I am.
But you're confident, let's say you had not gone to college at all, you're confident that you would have been an entrepreneur no matter what.
Would have been an entrepreneur, yes. I guess it's the question is like how successful.
Yeah.
What's the difference, I guess, in the success?
It's a wrong term, but it almost feels like you're alluding to, not like a brainwash, but like you go into the system and they're kind of preparing you, like you said, to be an employee.
Yeah.
And
so,
you kind of like juggled your world a little bit.
A little bit. Like, so at our school, I mean, it's all sponsored and kind of ran by, even the professors, they all work for these companies. So they're very like, incentivized, or they're just kind of promoting themselves. So it's not really, it makes a lot of sense. And, everybody kind of has that mindset of like, success is determined by like what type of job you get when you leave
Right.
school.
Well, I mean, the topic comes up all the time of like whether it's worth it to go to college, and whether there's
especially
a return.
when you're dropping $150,000.
Right, but I mean,
student
you know,
loan.
when you look at the return on the investment, if you're just going to college to get a return on investment, it's probably best to focus on a higher paying career job, because even $150,000,
engineer, yeah.
if you're worth $30,000 or $40,000 in the market before you go, and then you're worth 70, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, in 5 years you've paid off your entire investment, and the rest of your career is just, you know, cash money. So I really do think in a lot of circumstances, if you are career minded rather than entrepreneurial, then the ROI is almost always there if you pick a major that has, you know, some sort of job prospects afterwards. Engineering, information systems, finance, all those.
Yeah.
But to me, it seems like the ROI is definitely there. But if you're entrepreneurial to begin with, it could be a waste of time.
Totally, and there's so many ways to develop different skills nowadays, and most, especially if you're looking at like software engineering, most people you talk to are like, don't get a CS degree, like go take a boot camp or something where you're going to learn from people who are in the field. So,
well, and we've, you know, in a similar situation here, we have a lot of creatives that work at our company, and I don't think we've ever cared about a degree at all.
And to that point, like especially when you hire like a designer, you just look at their portfolio and it's like, this guy did 8 years at some design school. This dude's an 18-year-old that is incredible. And the 18-year-old's portfolio is more impressive. So you hire that person potentially as an independent contractor or something. So,
totally.
Yeah. So let's go back a little bit. Do you remember your first entrepreneurial hustle as a kid?
Yeah, so I don't have any crazy stories where I had any like major successes, but I was super into collecting basketball cards.
Me too.
And so I used to collect cards and sell them, you know, at school and stuff like that.
You have all the Beckett's that you had to check the prices?
Yeah, dude. I got every Beckett. Like I still have like bins and bins of cards. Like my mom actually started mailing them to me because she didn't want to throw them away, but she didn't want the burden.
Yeah, I have like all of
them.
Kobe Bryant's rookie cards, which I'm hoping actually means something at some point. But.
Yeah,
I've got some basketball cards. I was more into baseball cards, and I remember just looking through. I'm not sure what it was. It Beckett's.
Beckett was all the pricing. Yeah.
But I would just look at the highest priced card, and I'd be like, God, could you imagine
like
if you
a
had
Mickey
Mantle?
But nobody would ever give you what the Beckett actually said.
No.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's like Kelly Blue Book.
Yeah, for me too, like in high school, I remember, speaking of IT, so you'll probably appreciate this, just mix CDs for people at that point, Napster and LimeWire.
Totally.
But it would take 35 to 45 minutes to download one song. So I'm making $5 a CD, 13 to 15 songs. That's, you know, you put in 12 hours of work for $5. Wasn't the best business model.
About $2.50 an hour.
Yeah. So let's talk about Dr. Squatch for a second. What is, how long have you been in business now?
A little over 4 years, about 4.5.
And when did you officially, before the 4 years, are you thinking about it? Did you just start the LLC or the business and then go from there? Was there a business plan way before?
So I actually did it the opposite way. I did it with a very like Tim Ferriss lean startup approach, where I was like, okay, I'm just gonna like do this and see if it works, and then I'll figure out everything else later. So kind of like I was actually running the company for probably about 6 months or selling the products before I like had an LLC or anything like that.
Can you describe, so you finished grad school,
Yeah.
and at what point are you shifting towards this company?
Yeah.
What is did you have another job in between?
Talk about that. Yeah. So I after I left grad school, I got a job at an IT consulting company, and at the time I was like, this is my dream job. I got to travel, so every week I was basically going to a new location.
And this was in Chicago at this point,
Yeah,
right?
I lived in Chicago. I had a great life there. And so that was really fun for about 2 years. I really loved the traveling, but then I guess that kind of wore off. I was traveling less, and I was like, you know, kind of tired of that. And so once that went away, I was realizing that like the work that I was doing, I just really didn't enjoy. So it was like mostly audit and security based work.
Okay.
A lot of it was basically like government required, like different companies would have to get an IT audit or something like that, or some type of report. And so it wasn't that the client necessarily really valued our work. They were kind of forced to have it. And, you know, I guess I had this epiphany that I was looking at the people in my company. I was looking at the people at the top. So if you can make partner in a consulting firm, right? Which means you become a partial owner. And, you know, first of all, I was like, okay, these people are mostly miserable. You know, they still work 60 to 80 hours a week, even though they're 40, 50 years old. They're super unhealthy because they're traveling all the time. So they can't like work out or eat healthy. and like they don't even make that much money at the end of the day. Like their salary is pretty decent for a corporate world, but like what are they really like making, and do they even have like time or ability to like enjoy that? I was like, okay, and this is like the best case scenario. Like not everybody makes partner, you know, only the top 5 to 10% of the people in the firm. And so like I believe in myself, so I always thought I would make that, but definitely wasn't a guarantee. And so I kind of just had this epiphany of like, wow, like this is my career path. Even if I make it to the top, like I'm still probably going to be miserable. Like I got to get out of this because this is a disaster.
Well, I've heard that a lot too with entrepreneurs is usually you have a job too where you're looking at the top and you're not too impressed. And you're like, well, if that dude can do it or if that gal can do it, I definitely can do it. And it sounds like a little bit of that was the case as well with you.
Totally. And like for me, I think the biggest thing was I knew I was going down this path, and that if I was 30, 40, whatever years old and I was still here, then I would be really bitter and probably regret that like I didn't take any chances or try to do anything else with my life.
That takes some self-awareness at 22, 23, right?
Yeah, and at that point, this would have been considered a good job by most metrics. Sounds like benefits, decent pay, travel.
But usually people don't come to that epiphany until it's either too late or you have 3 kids.
I guess
and
until you got a mortgage and 3 kids and you can't get out.
I was lucky that I was single and this hit me at 25.
Yeah.
And
so how many employees do you guys have?
So do you want me to kind of continue that story? Because it's
I do. I want to hear how the...
Okay, so from there, I kind of remember the exact moment where I came up with the idea for my company, which is kind of interesting. So I was actually flying back from LA to Chicago, and I was reading the 4-Hour Workweek, of course, and I was like, okay, I had this moment where I was like, okay, like you're 25, like you're either gonna do this like now or you're never gonna do it. Yeah. So I was like, okay, you're not getting off this flight until you come up with a business idea. And so there's a 4-hour flight, or I was maybe like an hour or 2 into the flight, and I was like, okay.
Do you remember where you were flying from and to?
LA to Chicago.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I came up with this idea to basically like natural soap for men. And so a little bit more about that story. I have dry skin, and I have this condition called psoriasis. So I kind of like maybe 6 months before this happened, I got really into nutrition and using nutrition as a way to like manage that condition. And I started learning about like processed foods and basically that certain things in those products are not really good for us. And then that kind of like moved into personal care products. And so a lot of personal care products, kind of the same thing. There's a lot of chemicals and things that are used to make the products cheaper that aren't necessarily better for the end consumer. So I started using, I guess, better quality products, and it had a big impact on me. And so I had this thought that like, okay, it took me a lot of time to basically figure this out. And I was like, it shouldn't be that hard. Like more people should know about this, especially like guys have no clue. They just pretty much buy, and like for me, I buy whatever's cheapest at the store or like whatever I see on TV or whatever.
Whatever says for men.
Well, it's funny you said, because I have a little bit like psoriasis, eczema, like sensitive skin as well. And it takes a while to understand, like, why am I like, whatever, you're itching or what have you, and you realize you're using this right guard that has all these chemicals in it that's like affecting your skin essentially, but guys are never really taught to.
Right, you don't really think about it.
Right.
And so, so that was kind of, I guess, my moment of clarity, and that's kind of where everything started from, was that idea.
So you're on the flight, and you're basically just giving yourself an ultimatum to figure out a business model, basically?
Just an idea. Like, okay. So at the time I was reading the 4-Hour Workweek, right? And it's all about like just getting started and like doing something and like just trying it. And so at the time I didn't really think this was like a great idea, right? I was just like, I can probably sell this and I can probably start this. And that was what I cared about more. And I was like, okay, I'm going to learn something along the way, and maybe that'll take me to a better job, like at a startup. That'd be more fun or more exciting. Or I will discover a better problem to create a business around, because I'll be like creating my own business and I'll like build something to like solve a problem.
Now I'm curious of what didn't make the cut, because I know you're a scribble on there. What number 2 or number 3 idea was?
I don't know, man. That's a good question. I didn't. That's the kind of funny thing, and I'm very lucky in the sense that like I didn't try a bunch of things, and I don't have like a lot of these success stories like when I was a kid. Like this is kind of the first thing that I've done, and so. Now,
when you kind of came up with this concept, I lost my train of thought. Next question. I had a question. I'll come back to it.
So at what point do you say, all right, so you land essentially and you're like, this is the idea.
Yeah.
Do you quit your job immediately? Do you do a 6? a 6-month plan where it's like, let me save up a bunch of money so I can accomplish this thing? What was the?
Yeah, so I'll try to go back to that moment. Like, so I definitely didn't quit my job. I came up with some goals for myself and some structure. So I wanted to launch in 45 days.
Wow.
And so I basically committed to myself that I wasn't going to do anything else Monday through Saturday besides work. So I would go to my job and I would work from 8 to 5 or 8 to 6, whatever I had to do, and then from whenever until 10, 11 o'clock at night, I would basically work on this business. And so I was just trying to find the shortest path to get to where I needed to go. And so basically I had to find product to sell, and I had to build a website and build a brand, and that was really kind of the minimum, I guess, things that I needed to get started with.
So that's actually fascinating. So I think a lot of people wonder, there's no way I can do it. I have a full-time job and I have all these commitments. So for 45 days, you're working 4 to 5 hours every single weekday night.
Yeah.
And then Saturday, are you pulling like an 8 to 12-hour day as well?
Yeah, probably 8 to 10 hours on a lot of those days.
What did those days look like on a day-to-day basis? Was it a lot of thinking, or were you trying to put together a business model?
It was both. Like there was no strategic there was no plan, there was no business model. It was execution, because I didn't have a lot of time with my goal, right? So I mean, a lot of it at the beginning was research. So I wanted to learn, and I wanted to sell like a legitimate good product. I didn't want to like sell a bunch of crap to people. So it was contacting a bunch of manufacturers, sampling their product, then narrowing that down. And then I actually found a guy and a company who made soap that was about 2 hours away from where I lived in Chicago, so like northern Indiana. And that was kind of cool because it came from the same state that I grew up in, and I liked what the product that he had, and it was close enough where I could go visit him and work with him and talk to him about like what I wanted to do. So I kind of settled in with him, and then once I kind of had that locked in, I was able to pretty easily like construct, I think it was like 4 or 5 products at that time, like different types of soap that I wanted to start off with. So then I built a website.
See, this is where the IT comes back in, because from an e-commerce standpoint, you're like, as long as I get the product, right, I don't have to spend $100,000 on some dude to build me this huge infrastructure, right?
Well, and so at this point in time, you have zero background in beyond developing products, coming up with, which I think would be at least somewhat a complicated mixture to get the right amount of, suds and everything. I mean, when you're creating soap, I'm sure it takes a while to test out the products to make sure that the bar doesn't crumble or get overly sticky or melt or whatever.
Well, so I mean, that's in a case where you can rely on, and this is what I've kind of done the whole time I've been building the business, like you rely on experts to do what they're really good at, and you can provide your own unique value. So I wasn't trying to recreate a new bar of soap. Like this guy made really good soap.
You weren't making it in your kitchen, essentially. You were relying,
Right, this guy made really good soap. And so, but what he wasn't doing was he didn't have necessarily like the types of scents that I wanted specifically for guys. So that was kind of the value that I added. And then, nobody was selling it and marketing it in the way, communicating it in the way that I wanted to, so that guys were not really, walking out to their local farmers markets and buying like soap, right? So I was trying to reach a customer that hadn't been reached before with this type of product. So that's where the unique value came in that I was providing, not necessarily in coming up with like the best soap right off the bat. And then, as time has gone on, our company has taken more and more ownership over the product development process. But
so you weren't trying to compete with Dove and Irish Spring. You were trying to find your own little niche, which at that point, I don't think there was probably a men's line specifically.
Right. There was really nobody doing this in the way that I was doing it.
So I'm assuming this was mostly bootstrapped.
Yeah, 100% bootstrapped. The whole
Okay, and did you have a significant savings that you were working off of?
Yeah, so I had a good job, a good salary, and like I said, I didn't quit that.
Because you're still working at this time.
Yeah, so I think I invested maybe 4 to 5 grand over that kind of month or two period to get this off the ground.
And that was to work with the distributor to help develop the soaps?
Yeah, that was to buy inventory, to do some R&D, to build the website and to pay for like hosting costs and stuff like that, and then maybe like a little bit of marketing at the start.
So how much was your first order once you got the?
It was a few
the first
$1,000s
product? Okay.
worth of product, yeah.
And that's the goal there was just to throw it up on the website, and then how were you going to get it out to the masses to?
Yeah, I didn't really have a plan for that part.
The big part of it.
So I mean, I built this website, which is kind of funny because almost knowing like IT, I think almost hurt me at the beginning because I was like, oh, I want to build this like custom site, and so like I like
Overthought it.
Yeah, I totally overthought it. And I had this like custom HTML site that had like a PayPal checkout because like I wasn't gonna build my own checkout. That's crazy. And then like my friend after I showed him this was like, hey, have you ever heard of Shopify? I was like, oh, okay.
And so what year is this?
2013.
This was
right?
the end of 2000. This was like late 2013.
Yeah.
Okay. And so Shopify was fairly new at this point, or Shopify had been around a long time?
I mean, it definitely wasn't a public company. I think if I would have done enough research on like the best e-commerce platforms, I probably would have stumbled upon it. But I don't know. I wasn't aware of it at the time.
So at the 45-day mark, is that when you got your couple $1,000s worth of inventory, essentially?
Yeah, I don't know if I exactly hit that mark, but I would say within, I think this epiphany happened to me on a flight in July, and by October, my site was live.
That's pretty incredible because essentially you spent around 40 plus hours a week outside of your normal 9 to 5 for 6 to 8 weeks, and now you have a company essentially.
Yeah.
And was the long-term goal always to make this your full-time work, or
No.
did you think of this as like a side hustle that would get you to something different?
When I remember telling my friends this at the beginning, and because a lot of people thought I was crazy for doing this, and I was like, no, like I think I could like eventually get this to the point where we're making like at least 50, maybe 100 grand a year from this thing. Like I'm talking about like top line sales. So I had like no idea, that I was like, basically my vision was, and I think this was because I was just read the 4 Hour Work Week. I was like, okay, if I can just set this up and then I can get SEO for like men's soap and like natural soap and like men's natural soap, and I can get good SEO in all those categories, then I'll just like make money off that, and I'll kind of be able to like run itself.
So the first goal was to maybe make an extra $500 a month off of it type of deal, or more than that?
So like my monetarily, I didn't necessarily have specific goals because like I just didn't know anything. Like my goals were, like I said, were honestly to learn from this and to potentially leverage this into a better job.
Huh. So if you would have broke even, it's like whatever, it's a resume builder, it's experience. It's almost like grad school in a way too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to leave what I was doing. And so I saw this as like a path forward.
And did you look at this as something that could potentially just be passive income?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I was very much in that mindset of like 4 Hour Work Week.
Yeah.
Like, because I
Set it,
read these
forget
books
it.
and then I'm like, I gotta
yeah.
go all
It's
in
the
on
one thing
it.
we didn't put up here.
Yeah, it's a
That's
classic.
That's
So
a
you make
classic.
$2,500
Nobody
bucks a
pulls the
month,
Titans, though.
move to Thailand.
Yeah, or
And
that
then-
too.
Yeah. That's easy.
So after you get that first amount of inventory, at what point do you say, like, holy crap, this can actually be a legitimate business?
Yeah, so I started getting good feedback. So I launched the site, and then like, friends and family were buying it, and people really like the product. They love the branding. So like one funny story of that is I told my sister, who's a very creative person. She's a musician and she's an artist, and I told my sister like my idea for the company, and so she actually kind of sketched out this like little Sasquatch character. And I was like, this is perfect. So I kind of took that and finished it off into the logo that we have now. And then we originally called it Sasquatch Soap. And so people just like liked the branding, and they thought it was fun, and they liked the product too. So, people, so if you use natural soap for the first time and you've never used it, and this doesn't happen to everybody, but a lot of people will basically notice like just a way better experience than from whatever they were using before. And so I started hearing people like have that experience, and so that was cool. So I kind of felt like
way back up on experience, it's like your skin doesn't feel as dry, or
your skin doesn't feel as dry. Maybe you feel like cleaner or less like residue on your body.
Gotcha.
Like the scent of it just kind of improves like the shower experience. I know it sounds kind of silly.
shower experience, I like
but even today we still hear people like leave that in our reviews all the time. And
how's your shower experience these days?
Fantastic.
Oh.
Yeah, because he's using our.
Oh yeah,
soap.
he's using Dr. Swell's.
I've got what? Pine tar.
I need to
good stuff.
get some
Should have
product.
brought some for you.
Yeah. You only have one. This is actually like more of like a Shark Tank question. You have one product at the time.
One product line, yeah.
How
a few
much does
different
it
SKUs.
take? Or it's because I know if you're not buying it bulk, you kind of get screwed on the deal. So how much was it per bar? Then how much could you sell it for at that point?
I think it was costing me maybe around $1.50 per bar for just the product, and I was selling it for $6.
Okay.
And then you obviously have shipping fees involved there.
Would he box it up for you and everything at that point, or?
It would come like completely packaged. So at that point we were using like a paper wrap, so it was like, it looks super kitschy, and especially compared to what it is now. But it would come fully packaged, and then what I would do is whatever sales we would have for the week. So I was in consulting, so I would be gone usually Monday through Thursday or Monday through Friday on a job. I would come back, and there wasn't a lot of sales, but there would be a handful of orders, and then so I would like package those up, put them in the mail, and then ship them.
So
off
for example, there'd be like
Saturday.
19 orders of soap, and you would have to.
19 would be a great week
Okay.
at that point.
So you're talking like 8 to
5.
5. Okay.
I mean, yeah, a few.
But you're exclusively online,
Yeah.
and you're not really doing a bunch of marketing and advertising. So this is just pure SEO
Yeah.
based on what you've tried to set up for keywords.
It was SEO. It was like personal, family. It was
Yeah.
Facebook posts, not paid, obviously, just
Yeah.
Facebook posts that I was doing.
So you would get all the orders and like go down to the local UPS essentially and get it all out.
Yeah. I was using flat rate mail, like padded envelopes, throw them in there.
Was there a certain time where SEO or a viral type of post went big in those first like 6 months, where, like I mentioned, it turns into 5
Yeah.
orders a week to holy crap, I got 100.
Our
type
first big break was when, so there's this company called Bespoke Post, and it's like a men's like kind of luxury item or gift like distribution box. So they curate these boxes around certain themes and sell them, and it's a great gift item. And so we got contacted by them. I'm not sure how they found us. I think they liked our branding. They thought our product was unique, and so they wanted to carry it in one of their boxes. And they wanted 4,000 units, which at the time was crazy because that was probably
Sipping 5 per week.
yeah, that was probably
Yeah.
triple or even quadruple what we sold
Wow.
over the entire period of time.
Wow.
And so this was a purchase order though from them,
Yes.
or okay.
A purchase order to buy the product at cost, because what they do is they then give it to all their customers, and then
Hope
it's
they
a
go-
customer acquisition tool for us, because
Sure.
then those people try the product, and if we can convert, let's say 5% of those customers to then come back and buy from us, and it's a great.
So was that an email or a phone call? Because I'm assuming it's like we want to buy.
They emailed us out of the blue.
And did they say 4,000 units at that point, or?
I think we hopped on a call, and I was just like super nervous about blowing
Yeah.
it, and like
Cause we've had a similar experience, but it's like you're on the phone, like we want 4,000 units. Like, okay, sounds good. I'll definitely work on that. And in your mind, you're like doing backflips.
like,
Like, holy shit. Yeah.
yeah.
That's
Yeah, and I
hilarious.
think I was nervous to ask them to pay for it, and like, and I remember getting that check for like a little over $4,000, and I was like, oh, like,
It's a big deal, man.
yeah.
So at that moment, people through that whole process end up liking the soap, and now you have like returning customers that are finding you online.
Yeah, that was a big, kind of a big moment for us in terms of putting ourselves on the map, and then through like a friend of a friend, I met the lead men's buyer at Birchbox, which I don't know if you guys have heard of it. It's
Yep.
a very big cosmetic subscription company for men and women, and so we were able. So talking to him, like working with him, we were able to eventually get our product into Birchbox as well.
Wow.
Now-
which was more expensive because we had to give it away,
Interesting.
but it was a good opportunity.
So for that first box that you did,
Yeah.
what was the return on that? So you got all that it cost, all of the efforts were free. What was the conversion?
Yeah, I mean, let's say it was hard. We didn't definitely wasn't as sophisticated as we are now about tracking that stuff. We didn't have like specific way to track back those customers, but since we were so small, I could tell that like, oh, this is a huge jump in sales. Like it's pretty clear why this happened. So maybe we got like, I don't know, 100, 200 customers from that,
Huh.
Okay.
which is huge for us at the time.
So good.
And so the meeting with Birchbox, that sounds like another bigger level up.
And is this
Yeah.
6 months in or sooner?
Yeah, that was maybe six months in.
That's pretty good. 6 months in.
And how did you get that meeting? Because I think there's a lot of people out there that think like, oh man, I've got this product, like
Yeah.
I can't get a meeting because how do I do it? How did that come about?
I think it's easier than you think. if you can find the right, I guess, intersection of like value and need. So like these companies, like literally their only job and their only value that they provide to their customers is like finding cool new products. And so that's, at that time, that's what we were. Like we could use the advantage of like nobody knowing about us, like almost as a good thing, because it wasn't like they were putting something in these boxes that somebody had already heard of. Like the customer's not really going to be like stoked about that. Their kind of job is to find new stuff. So that
you're making their job. You're
advantage.
providing value by making their job easier. Like, hey, we have this great product.
Exactly. So yeah, I mean, it was super intimidating because Birchbox is like this huge company, or at least we perceived it as that at the time, and but you just have to be who you are and like.
But did you cold email? Did you know who the person was?
No, so I was lucky. So a friend of a friend knew this guy personally, so I got introduced to him, and then we like jumped on a call. He explained what Birchbox was, I explained about what our product was, and then I sent them samples. And that's kind of like the point where you like cross your fingers, because it's like they try it, and then if they like it, you're golden. If they don't, then you're kind of screwed. So. And
you said the first order through Birchbox, you've got to front all product.
Yeah, so we sent them maybe, I don't remember exactly what the first one was, maybe like another 3,000 to 5,000, but we had to front all of that.
So that's check that you're writing for $5,000 plus dollars.
Yeah.
And just on the hopes that it takes off.
Yeah, so I mean, in that case, I've definitely done a lot of bad marketing deals where I didn't get the return, but at least in this case, I knew that people were going to try the product. So I knew that if I'm giving them 5,000 bars,
you've got to get it in people's hands at some point.
Exactly. I knew that at least 5,000 people were going to try the product. So even if it didn't work out, like marketing wise, I knew I was going to get something.
It's almost like a case study if people enjoy the product or not. So at what point do you, after Birchbox, is that when you're like, I need to start scaling my company a little bit as far as, am I going to quit my job? Like, where was that intersection?
So around this point, I start to like, this is kind of funny. Around this point, I start to like get this idea that I'm like, okay, well, I'm pretty successful now. Like my company's blowing up. Like people are starting to hear about us. Like I'm an entrepreneur. Like I know what I'm doing. So I actually quit my corporate job around this time. But I still needed income. So I moved to New York to work for a software startup, because I wanted to get deeper and deeper into the entrepreneur world. So this was actually driven by my girlfriend at the time wanting to move to New York. And I was like, okay, like I'm ready to leave Chicago, but I need to have like something to do there. And then so I found this guy through a friend.
And was that more flexible where you didn't have to necessarily be in the office 9 to 5?
It was definitely more flexible. Yeah. So again, like I had that background in IT, and so it was an e-commerce software company. So we built software for this specific e-commerce platform for customers. And so I was like, okay, I'll learn more about e-commerce. Like it seemed like a good fit at the time. And so I went into that and moved out to New York.
And then at what point does it become a full-time gig where you're like, I have to quit everything and go all in?
That took a little bit longer. Yeah. So that job at New York kind of fizzled out. I ended up leaving New York. The company, went through some rough times, and basically I wasn't able to get paid. And so then now I'm stuck, without a job.
Wait, back up. So you worked for a period of time and they just did not pay you?
I worked for them, and then like things were going well, and then the company just kind of ran out of money, and so I basically lost a job like a little bit unexpectedly.
But that also doubles down a little bit on the entrepreneur mindset, because you're like, I don't want to have to rely on anybody else ever again.
It does. It definitely like kicked me into gear, because now I'm totally on my own. I got this company that's like somewhat successful, but I'm still not really making enough to like consistently pay myself and live off of. But I had to figure that out because I have nothing else to fall back on.
So what's the next step after that?
So I was struggling for maybe 4 or 5 months, living off my savings. It was definitely one of the more kind of stressful bottoming out points of my life. I was very close to running out of money, and I was basically like, I was coming up with ideas for like different like freelance consulting that I could do, or like I was looking for jobs.
Which takes you away from doubling down on the business,
Yeah, so I had a little bit of money in the business, and I invested that into this marketing class at this place called General Assembly in San Francisco, where I was living at the time. I choose to like live in these super expensive cities. And then
I have no money. Let's move to San Francisco.
Yeah.
Well, you were already in New York, so.
yeah. But it worked out well. So I joined this class, and I had this basically epiphany in the class that my company was not meant for like Google AdWords, which I was like trying to do at the time, and really just kind of like capping out. And I needed to go and move into Facebook ads. And I was like, this is where it's going to work for me.
And this is late 2014?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, early in the game on Facebook ads.
Yeah. So definitely at the time, like I didn't even know that, like I knew that there was Facebook ads, but I was kind of like, okay, well, that's cool. But like, obviously like Google is where it's at. Like I just didn't know. And I learned from this guy in the class who was basically the head of customer acquisition for an apparel brand. And so he was like, Facebook ads is everything. And so that blew my mind. And I basically just went all in on learning that. And that changed my business overnight. So within a month of implementing that, our revenue tripled. And then a year later, we doubled again. And so that changed my life and changed my business was learning that. And that's where we learned how to scale.
During that moment, did you have like a backup plan? Like, if I run out of money, like, am I going to get VC? Am I going to ask uncle for a loan? Like, what was
No, I mean, I was going to continue to bootstrap. At that point, I knew more about what I wanted, and I didn't want to build this company to have somebody to answer to.
Yeah.
And so, and honestly, at that time, like, I had talked to a couple investors, and they would ask me questions like, okay, if we gave you $50,000 tomorrow, like, what would you do with it? And I could never answer those questions very well. So I was like, okay, this is good. Like, I can't have this money because like I'm gonna blow it.
I'll get a great apartment with a view in San Francisco first and foremost.
Sure. Yeah, exactly.
For
so
3 months.
So I was more focused on like backup plans in terms of, okay, what can I do to like go make money? So I was like creating like I was building like a personal website that I could use for like doing personal consulting, and so I was going to continue to like fund myself through that.
And at this point in the company, no employees, no partners.
I had a business partner, so a little bit of that story is like kind of before, like while I was in New York, I brought him on as a partner. He started selling the soap. He's like a very adventurous guy, and he was doing like kayak guiding in Washington State and San Juan Islands. And so before he started that, he needed some money basically. And he always like really loved the brand and loved what I was doing. And so it made sense for us to work together. So we created a deal where he basically became a sales rep for me and started selling the soap. And that went pretty well. We started picking up like wholesale clients. And so he did that for maybe 3 or 4 months.
So he was your boots on the ground in Washington at this point, essentially? Okay.
Yeah, so like all over the Seattle kind of area, he was basically selling retail stores. And it was working. And so that was like a huge revenue source for us at the time. And he wanted to be more involved in the business, so eventually he invested and became a partner in the company.
Okay.
So
Facebook ads goes extremely well. You triple your revenue, essentially, you said.
Quickly.
Quickly. So is that the point where you could say, I'm going to get rid of all these freelance gigs and it's time to go all
Yeah,
away?
so that was basically that kind of that holiday season in 2014. So I think that part of it was also the timing, but also learning the ads and then hitting it with the right timing and everything. We were able to scale the company, and that was when we were able to like basically have enough money left over to pay ourselves for the first time.
And when you initially got into the business, what was your benchmark? Was it like, did success look like if I can just pay myself my previous, salary? What was your expectation?
I think I had this idea that if I could make what I used to make, which wasn't that much money, but I was like, it was a comfortable living. If I could replace that income with something that I totally control and I'm doing it with my friend, like what more could I want with my life?
Yeah.
At that point is what I thought.
Then you hit that, and then you're like,
exactly.
I'm working awfully hard here.
Of course.
So when you get that big order, is that when you have to hunker down and kind of work those famous 16 to 18 hour days, or from an e-commerce standpoint, was those type of days not necessarily something you had to do?
I had a lot of those days, and looking back on it, a lot of it's just because I didn't know what I was doing. So if you don't know what you're doing, and let's say you know exactly what you need to do, and it only takes 3 hours, then you only need to work for 3 hours. But if you have no idea what you need to do and you work 16 hours, like maybe you'll find 3 hours of productivity in there. And so I think I was doing.
What'd you say? You always say you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, when
It's
you're
like-
learning, that's the thing. It's like
Yeah.
you can waste so much time, but if you're not
Right.
doing
I
that,
remember
then you'll never get to
when
know
we
it.
first started, we did like infographics for our clients for football teams. And in Photoshop, there's a very easy tool where you can make a text box and left align everything. And I remember I typed each word and would move it, and then type a new word and then move it, and then zoom in and get my ruler, like just silly
Classic
stuff.
example.
Yeah, it's like takes 7 hours to do a
Yeah.
15-minute task.
Yeah, I think for me, I was literally trying to do every marketing technique that had like ever been created. So
Just doing, and I put in like 10% of your effort into all these different things instead of going all
exactly,
in.
it's like reading every marketing book,
Yeah.
every growth hacking technique, like every channel.
And so Facebook ads has been really probably the best marketing tool that you've had, or advertising tool.
Yeah.
And that's led to your growth. Are you still all in on Facebook ads?
Yes.
That's your primary marketing advertising.
Yeah, it's our 80-20. So it's not our only thing or our everything, but it's by far the biggest driver of growth for the
And then,
company.
go ahead.
Does that make you nervous?
Yeah, it does.
Because we work, not in the advertising side of things, but
Paid
we
media.
create content,
Yeah.
do paid media strategies, and year over year, a logarithm change can have serious effects on what is successful and what is not.
Yeah.
Are you up at night
Yeah,
waiting
those
for them
happen,
to change?
and those little changes, they happen all the time, and so not even year over year, but from one day to the next,
Yeah.
your return can drop, a couple 100% on Facebook ads, and you start freaking out because it's our thing. So it's one of the most interesting questions I think about my business right now is how much do I go on that, and how much should I be investing in other channels, and everybody has their own opinion on it, but a lot of books or people that have scaled companies recommend being really good at one or two things.
So 2014 holiday season, it's really turned into a business now. You and your partner. What's the first scalable employee that you bring on to try to help?
Yeah. So at that point, customer support is starting to become a huge burden. So just basically replying to customers.
People
and
not
then-
getting their orders, or people not getting enough.
Yeah,
or-
it's crazy how much you would think that it would be pretty smooth.
Pretty
and that
straightforward,
Buying a bar of soap wouldn't require that much support, but it does. And that plus we had this subscription product that we kind of bootstrapped that as well, and so we had a very manual process to make that work, which meant that every order that came in for that we had to manually enter. So I was spending at that time 4 to 5 hours a day on customer support and manual order processing. And so that was very clearly
the bottleneck.
at that point it was a huge pain, and it was like, okay, somebody else needs to be doing this because
Yeah.
it's not a great use of my time.
And so you brought on an agency to help with that, or actually full-time employees?
I had a friend to do that part-time who had recently left his job and wanted some kind of flexible remote work.
And you're still at Frisco or San Francisco at this point?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. At what point did you move to San Diego and kind of continue to scale the company?
Yeah, I actually moved here about 10 months ago.
Oh, okay, so
So it's pretty recently. So I continued to scale the company in San Francisco, and we still run it pretty lean. I mean, we've hired a lot of. What I do is basically hire, I guess, specialists to execute specific things. So I work with a lot of marketing contractors or service agencies or specialists to kind of do certain things, and then my internal team is more focused around operations and customer support.
And what's the size of your team now?
So we have basically 2 full-time employees, and I have 7 to 8 different marketing agencies and contractors that I work with. I have basically a CFO type function and bookkeeper. That's pretty much the team.
Very lean.
Yeah.
So when you're in San Francisco and you're scaling the team, if you will, at what point do you decide to start making additional products other than just the one product, which was the soap?
Yeah. I think so. In terms of our company, when I look at what, as I started to get more educated about what really is making us successful, a big thing that we realize is that, I think it goes both ways, but we want to provide as much value as possible to our customers, and in return, we want to, get as much, I guess, profit over the lifetime of that customer as we can, because it's very expensive to bring in a new person, and so we want to really provide a lot of value to them. once we get them in our ecosystem. And so in order to do that, we have to have, more products to sell them. And so we kind of basically just went to customers and asked them what they wanted us to make. And then we started making stuff in that order. And so we've been working on our shampoo for about almost 2 years before we released it last October.
Interesting. And that's a whole nother process where you got to find a whole nother vendor.
Whole other process, and it's a lot more, in terms of the formulation, it's way more complicated than making soap. I mean, I didn't start making the soap off at the very beginning, but I've definitely made plenty of bars of soap at this point, and I do a lot of that for R&D, not necessarily like the full-scale production. And it's a pretty easy thing that anybody could make, but the shampoo and conditioner is a much more complicated process.
So what's the favorite part of the business that you're in right now?
My favorite part for me is so I've learned that I'm very good at strategic thinking and creating systems and kind of like long-term planning. So that's where I like to focus my time as much as possible, and that's where I get kind of the most enjoyment out of. And I'm very
like what the next step is or how we're going to grow.
And I'm very lucky to be in a position where I'm not in charge of day-to-day operations, but that is kind of my role, is thinking about that. And really it's trying to find and network with people who have been there and done that before in specific areas. And so a lot of my job is to find those people and to create relationships with them.
And least favorite part of the business you're in, or industry you're in, I should say. Because I'm fascinated with talking to Chris Lynch, who we all know as well, with the retail side of things, and you with soap, just having to rely on the distributors sometimes, because you'll have the purchase orders and you're kind of waiting on the person to make it sometimes.
We don't have a lot of huge issues with that. I think for me, where I'm at, one thing I love about my company is how virtual and flexible it is, but I always am wondering, like, would it be more fulfilling or enjoyable if I had like a full in-house team that I was interacting with on a day-to-day basis? So I kind of feel a little bit isolated and alone sometimes.
Right.
What was the most challenging time for this particular business?
In the summer and fall of 2014, when I had no job, was just watching my savings account dwindle, not making any money in the company, and not really knowing what to do. And at that point, I thought I was good at business. I thought I was good at marketing, but looking back on it, I had no like scalable or repeatable model that I could go back to and execute. And so it was just a lot of like hoping that deals would come through, or that people would find us, or that like another Birchbox would come along, or it was just a lot of like spray and pray, or kind of like, hoping for things to go your way. And
when you look back at that moment, you probably weren't practicing it as much, because I know I wasn't back in the day, but how important is patience during that process? 'Cause I think there's so many opportunities for you to be like, screw it, going back to corporate world, and kind of give up on the dream.
Yeah, I don't know if it's patience so much as like, I think it's a little bit of foolishness.
Blind faith, if you will.
Blind faith. Yeah. I was just so driven. Like looking back on it, it's kind of insane, and like, it's like, okay, why are you doing this? But I was so driven to make this work that I had my reality. I just had no other, nothing in mind.
There's no alternative.
So there was nothing else for me.
But it's not that foolish, because look where you are today. So I mean,
right.
The ROI of that period works out.
Yeah, but I think patience is huge. Like it's something that I'm going through right now, because I'm less involved in the day-to-day of like actually executing projects. So it's a lot of managing people and managing teams. And so a lot of waiting for other people to come through for me, which is a frustrating experience at times, that you have to be patient.
So during the 4-year company thus far, what's the best piece of business advice you've ever received?
So there was a moment where we had an opportunity to meet with some investors who incubated a really, really successful company in our niche. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say which company, but so this was early in 2014, like the spring. So we didn't know what we were doing, but they liked our business model, and they saw potential in us, and so they flew us out to Santa Monica to visit with them. And these are people that were asking me the questions like, okay, if we gave you $50,000, like what would you do with it? Like, what's your lifetime value of the customer? Like, how do you get new customers?
Customer acquisition costs.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, what? So, but that experience, I don't know if it's advice, but that experience taught me so many foundational things that I eventually used to grow the company. And one of the guys at the company.
In terms of needing to know the answer to those questions?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So that sent me on a good path. And we also received a financial model from them, even though they chose not to invest with us, and on like how they would have scaled their company if they would have done that. And so I kind of had this like epiphany moment where basically I realized that I could reduce my company to a math equation where you have, lifetime value of the customer on one side and customer acquisition cost on the other side, and you want to reduce one as much as possible and have one be as high as possible. And that if you can figure out that equation, then you can scale your company.
Dude, we got to get Jack to make some equations for us.
Yeah.
I like that.
I mean, that's where it's like the one benefit of a product is like it is what it is.
Right.
Each product has the margins and you can buy them for this much money, but then you're also beholden to, if Facebook changes the logarithm, that can really change your entire business. So I think we're always fascinated to hear from people that are not in services.
Well, we're in client services, so at any point, no matter how well the job we do, our client go back a year later and say, hey, we love you, but my VP just cut budget 50%. Sure. So you have no control over that. But it seems like in your case, like I have no control if Facebook decides to quadruple the price of, impressions.
And anybody in B2C looks at B2B like, can you imagine? They just have all this budget.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not even their money that they're spending. And then we look at the opposite now and it's like, man.
Yeah, because he's said some things in the past too. I'm just like, yeah, but every company has that one thing. Like, only if we didn't have to worry about this. There's always that thing that just like keeps you up at night.
Grass is always greener for sure.
Yeah.
I guess I was going to ask you what book you would recommend to entrepreneurs. I'm assuming 4 Hour Work Week is right up there towards the top.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan. So I do this thing now where I read 1 or 2 books per month that are kind of specific as possible to the problem that I'm going through in my business, and then I try to actually apply that. So
we got to read more.
I used to just read. I think I read too much, and then like I wasn't really doing a lot with it. So I think like to really answer that question, I have to know where that person is in their journey, and I think that there's like a book that can help you out wherever you are in your journey. But to get started, like the 4 Hour Work Week and the Lean Startup were my two favorite books that I really learned a lot from for like how I started my company. And I think a lot of people at the beginning want to make things too complicated, or they want to have like super elaborate business plans, and they want to get patents, and they want to invest $20,000, $50,000, $100,000 before they even sell anything.
Yep.
And I did the opposite. So I'm not saying that can't work, but that's just not what I did. And then more recently, I've been more kind of along the lines of I want to scale my company and I want to optimize it and make it profitable. And so the book Scaling Up, and also this book by Greg Crabtree, it's basically an accounting book for business owners. It's called Straight Talk, Simple Numbers, Big Profits. Nice. Those are probably the two of the best books I've read based on like where I'm at right now.
Very cool.
So what business tool, I don't know if it was Shopify or not, but what business tool was most instrumental to your success so far?
Yeah, I'm going to say Trello. So kind of scaled and grew our whole company off of Trello, and I use it for most of my, like to manage my contractors and my third-party service people. So it's a way to keep everything in one place, and it's not very complicated, but that's what I like about it because it's so easy to use for everybody.
And then as far as culture, do you guys have a set of core values that you try to implement with new employees? Or
Yeah, we do. Again, our team is small, but like I think a few things like
which is even more important though, right? Because you bring somebody into that ecosystem that disrupts everything, it can really screw things up.
Right, they can have a big impact. That's a good point. So we try to think in terms of systems. So one thing that drives me crazy is like constantly trying to solve the same problem rather than just trying to prevent it. So I try to train all my employees to think in terms of systems and like, okay, if this thing is happening, obviously we need to fix it right away, but then how can we just prevent that from happening in the future rather than constantly having to try to fix it?
Love it.
Continual learning, just having fun is a big one for us. Like our product is fun, our brand is fun. Like life is short, like let's have some fun. And then, we really believe in natural products. And so bringing on people who kind of believe in that message and really live that message is important for us because it kind of exudes that, throughout the company.
So what do you hope to accomplish next with your business?
That's a good question.
We're going back to the days where he had to explain what he could do with $50,000.
It's a big question, but
yeah,
do you want to, are you looking towards an exit? do you want to keep this forever and be as profitable as you possibly can?
Yeah. I'm actually working with some people to help construct this plan, but I do have a kind of a 3 to 5 year goal that I would like to either exit the company or have it at a point where I have more of an advisory role. There's other things that I'm interested in doing with my time, and so I would love to get to a point where I'm basically at an advisory or have exited the company.
What do you think what is that one piece missing that just elevates the company to the, I guess, I don't know if Axe body spray or what have you, like that type of level
Dollar
where it's just
Shave
everywhere.
Club.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what everybody wants.
You know, we need to do 2 things. Like, we need to find more customers, and we need to continue to maximize and improve the lifetime value of our current customers. And that's really the bottom line of what it is. And then how do we do that? You know, we need to continue to release really good amazing products. So we'll be releasing a few new soaps this year. I'm hoping to release an all-natural deodorant this year. And then I'm working on creating an analytics platform right now that's going to give me more real-time data in terms of being able to analyze my lifetime value of customers by very like segmented and targeted methods.
And since 2013, how many competitors? Because it seemed like in 13 you're kind of the only game in town, really, as far as men's soap. But has there been some competitors during that process where you're like, oh, now I gotta compete against?
There's always competitors. I mean, and I look at competitors as like a channel specific thing. So there's obviously tons of soap on the market, but people like Irish Spring and Old Spice aren't really selling their products online, which is where we are.
That's it.
So we do compete with them in the sense that like people might use those products and then they might use ours, but we're not directly competing with them online. And then we have competitors like Dollar Shave Club who sell similar products through a subscription model like we do. And so we're a little bit different in terms of just our marketing and branding. I mean, we're a more natural product that's obviously specifically focused on men. And then, on Amazon, for example, there's always different competitors popping up. And there's people that are kind of, I would say, mimicking us, and we see that a little bit as well.
So do you think retail's even in play, or are you steering away from that completely?
It's one of my biggest questions that I need to come to grips with. So right now we're not doing a lot of retail, and I'm still interested in pursuing that as a channel. Like, I have people tell me that, you found a business model that works, just stick to that, don't do retail. But I'm one of those people that needs to like learn lessons the hard way. So I want, I want to pursue that and see how it goes.
Put it in Costco, and then it'll do really well. Then they'll cancel your orders and put Kirkland on it, and you'll be good to go. That's usually how it goes.
So outside of Dr. Squatch specifically, what is the end goal for your career as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so I've done some thinking about that, and I want to either sell my company or get to a point where I'm not involved as much in operations, and then I would love to become an angel investor and advisor to other startup companies. So I have very strong skill sets in certain areas, and so I want to find other companies who need those skills, and I like what they're doing, and then they can benefit from me in terms of capital and my expertise, and then I want to take a role in those companies and help them grow.
You talk about systems a lot. What was the toughest part about scaling for you, especially when it comes to people and dealing with different personalities?
The toughest part is getting, for me, I guess a couple different points of that. Like, the toughest part at the beginning is just getting to the point where you can scale. And so when you think about a business like...
Because everything's in your head at that point. It's like, how do I...
Yeah, and you're using a lot of different... so you read all these marketing tactics, but you might not apply them at the right point in your business. And so if you haven't found like a scalable channel, like honestly, that's all you should be looking for. And you should be testing things and seeing if it's going to be potentially like scalable or not. And if it isn't, then you should just be moving on to the next one. I didn't really have that mindset at the time. I was just like trying a million things, and like, so I was just spinning my wheels until I luckily stumbled upon Facebook ads. If I had a more like methodical approach, I would have probably found that a lot faster. And then once you get into that point, I think it's kind of keeping up with making sure your systems work. So like as you scale, stuff that you do, your processes will break, and then you got to fix them, and creating that in a way where you minimize that will save you time, I guess, and keep things like more efficient rather than constantly putting out fires like I was saying before.
So I know there's a lot of people that are interested in trying to, if they want to work for you, right? So there's a lot of people exiting college and they want to get involved in different companies. Has there been one story where you've been impressed by somebody reaching out to you, or just getting your attention where you're like, I want to give this person a shot?
I mentor a lot of people right now that are starting companies, and I kind of want to help them along the journey, and I see them maybe as like I was in their shoes, or I was at their point certain times, and I just resonate with people who are doing something for a reason. And so for me, there's a lot of people, and I don't want to say anything is wrong or right, but there's a lot of people that look at a product or an industry or even like a marketing technique, and they're like, I'm really good at Facebook ads, so like I'm just gonna pick some random product and throw it out there and sell it. And I'm a believer in doing something that is meaningful to you. So I tend to resonate most with people that I guess have some reason behind like what they're doing.
So have those like core values innately if you're going to bring them on board, essentially.
Right.
So talk about work-life balance a little bit. I deal with this topic a lot. I think there's a lot of articles, a lot of BS out there about what that means. I think everybody's a little bit different, but how do you deal with that, business and personal?
I think I have a pretty good work-life balance. I have a lot of hobbies that I maintain, and health is always really important to me. So working out and eating healthy is something that I've always like been able to schedule time for. But I've found that in terms of work-life balance, what works best for me is to kind of let my life dictate what I need to focus on, and to just really go deep on stuff when it feels right. So there's times when I'll work 80 hours in a week because like I'm really pulled into a problem that I need to solve, or like a project.
Or you just happen to be firing on all cylinders, essentially.
Yeah, exactly, where it just feels good. And then like the next week I might just not feel like working at all, and like I want to go surfing, and so I'll do that. So I think that for me, what works is actually allowing for some of that like flexibility.
They call that in sports, letting the game come to you, Don't try to.
Exactly, that's a great analogy. Yeah. So rather than, and I often try to set up these like really rigid schedules, and like I'll stick to that for like a month, but then it'll like drive me crazy because I'm like, well, this isn't why I signed up to be an entrepreneur. And so like I kind of have the luxury of diving deep into stuff whenever it feels right.
To that point, we talked with Chris a little bit, and it was kind of an interesting topic that we got on, and it was entrepreneurial guilt. Because I think him and I deal with it too, is when you're not working on the business, you feel guilty that you're not working on the business. When you're working on the business, you feel guilty you're not doing enough for your family or personal life. So talk about how you deal with that, or some examples of that. Yeah,
I can definitely relate to that. I would say I've gotten better. I mean, especially when at the beginning when I was trying to grow my company, and like I wasn't where I wanted to be, and I'm still not exactly where I want to be in the long run, but I've achieved a certain level of success. That was extremely hard for me to enjoy any part of my life. And for maybe 2 years, like I couldn't go out, I couldn't do anything without being like, oh, I should be doing this instead. Eye
on the prize at all times.
Yeah. So I don't have a great recommendation for how to fix that, but I think it's definitely a problem, and I think it helps to talk to other entrepreneurs about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I find it interesting too to see that everybody has an issue with work-life balance, whether you are single or have 5 kids and a ton of stuff going on in your life. Because David will talk about times where he feels guilty for working when he feels like he should be out, and I may have the same type of guilt if I'm doing something with the family when I feel like I should be working or really digging into something. So it seems to be consistent across the board. No matter what your life situation is, people feel out of whack with work-life balance.
I think one thing that helps is like getting really clear on your values for your life and like where you're heading. And if you know like where you're going for that, then it's easier to like make some of those decisions, or it's easier to have some of that downtime because you're like, well, I might not be working today, but like I know that I'm still going in the right direction.
Well, I think what's especially, and we're both 4 years old, the companies. Yeah. And if you put in a weekend of work on a pitch, especially in client services, or maybe you talking about a new product, that can severely change the course of your company, just like digging in for 30 hours. Totally. So I think as an entrepreneur, you're always like, if I just put 30 hours into X, this can take us there.
Right.
And then
or it could do nothing.
Or it could do absolutely nothing. It's absolutely right. But you've seen it in the last 4 years. I'm sure you've seen it like on the plane. I took 4 hours and just focused in on my business plan, and look where the hell I am today. And that's what kind of, I think, the 2 guys on your shoulders talking to you at times.
Yeah, but I also find for me that if I'm sitting down with a scheduled time to think, it may
No.
not be there.
No.
Exactly.
And I may
yeah.
come up with something really good in a random conversation on a weekend where I'm like, hey, that's a really great idea.
Totally.
So you're right about like those ideas kind of have to come to you. And I do find that like, I think part of the work-life balance that I don't have is I don't read. Because just from the things that I would like to read is all these books that we have displayed.
You ever read all those puppies?
Displayed
Too
proudly
many,
here.
yeah.
But just taking the time to read and have that free time, which I would do if I didn't own a business, just to enjoy, I think there's a lot of opportunity to find inspiration sometimes too.
Oh, yeah.
And I think inspiration is more important and valuable than just like, information. So where can I find that inspiration to feel like, hey, I really want to go and just give it
Totally.
90 hours next week?
Yeah, and so I would call that flow. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with that term, but I've taken some tests that are almost like personality tests for work or for business that help you identify what gets you most in flow. And flow state is where everything kind of comes easier to you, and you're more productive, you're more
11:30
creative.
to 2 a.m. for me, unfortunately. So that's what
That's
happens.
great. So I mean,
Yeah.
I think that a huge part of it is like focus on working on those things that get you into flow, or the times or the situations, and just let that.
Well, I think Pharrell, the famous rapper producer, said almost all of his hits have came in the shower, on a plane, or on a car drive,
Yeah.
because of the sound, the kind of not consciousness sound in the background does something to your brain to kind of think that.
Yeah,
But-
when you're not trying to think of it and you're just kind of able
totally
to go.
free,
And,
But I thought it was interesting that he actually has like attributed that. Like when I'm in those places, I actually have my most flow, if
Yeah,
you will.
planes for me as well.
Yeah.
Like I do a lot of planning, and like things just seem to come out.
So
we're gonna have to wrap. We got 5 minutes before you got to take your call.
okay, so I'll ask a few more rapid fire questions. So it sounds like you really don't have like a morning routine, which you see a lot of that online because
Yeah, that's interesting that you bring that
yeah.
up. So I live in this entrepreneur house, and so we all basically collaborate together. And every month we have a monthly challenge, and I've been kind of
we gotta get more on that next time too.
Yeah.
I've been
Fascinating.
unsatisfied with my morning routine lately. So we're actually making that our challenge for June, is to come up with a morning routine and then stick to it for the whole month.
Are
So-
you naturally a wake up early person, a night owl, kind of all over the
No,
place?
I'm more of a sleep in
Yeah.
type of guy. So this
Yeah.
was a little early for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I typically get up by 8 at the absolute latest.
But there's a lot of articles, Richard Branson and The Rock or whoever, wake up at 4 a.m. and I get my coffee and I work out. And I think even for me too, where you read a lot of that, and I saw Zuckerberg came out recently, like I don't wake up till 8:30.
Yeah.
And that kind of was like inspiring to me, like there's different ways to do it. There's not a one size fits all.
I've tried the 5 a.m. wake ups.
Never.
and
It's miserable.
It's rough.
Plus, then I have to be asleep at 11.
There's a
a.m.
legit-
That's the
Legitimate.
hard part, is like
Yeah.
forcing yourself to go to sleep at the right time. And then if you miss it, you're like,
I'm
Yeah.
fascinated. I would love to like do more research into like the sleep drunkenness, if that's a word.
Mm.
But like I will have every like anticipation of waking up early, getting to work. And I've worked out early, like at 6 a.m. like 4 times in my life. And every time I've done it, I felt amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But you have that idea in your head when you go to bed, when you wake up like, nope, not doing it.
Yeah.
It's just incredible.
So, what does it mean to you to be an entrepreneur?
It's interesting. So for me, it's meant different things at different points in my life. So what was really driving me when I first got started was just this like idea of freedom over my time and ability to have control over my own life. And now that I've achieved a little bit of that, my values have changed, and I want to create a business that can impact a lot of people and do something really cool. So I think that's, I guess, the cool thing about entrepreneurship is that you can kind of change what it means to you over time.
Who inspires you in business?
I mean, Tim Ferriss is probably
Yeah.
the guy I've looked up to the most, and just the way that he is so methodical about approaching learning and new topiks, and I guess exposing himself to new ideas.
The human guinea pig, right?
Yeah.
Favorite quote?
So there's this quote that I use a lot, and it's do something that scares you today, but it would excite your future version of yourself. So I think it's kind of just pushing your boundaries, and what you do that might freak you out the first time might be something that you love, a few months or years down the road.
That's good. I like that.
So I'm going skydiving on Thursday.
Hey.
I'm terrified.
Right on.
No, you're more of a skydiver guy. It scares the hell
Yeah,
out of me.
I would do that.
Well, man, yeah, it's been fascinating. I think the ride for sure. I'll let you in with this. What, being an entrepreneur and we've kind of talked about it, but what's the ultimate goal for you when it's all said and done? When you look back at your life,
Yeah.
what have you accomplished if you hope to accomplish?
Yeah, hopefully made some type of impact on the world and helping the world become a better place. And so I think that's one of the reasons why I want to eventually leave my company. And I love what we're doing and I love our mission, but there are some other things that I want to do, and there's some other problems that I think the world needs help solving. And so hopefully I can contribute to one of those problems.
Very cool.
Right on, man. Well, Jack, thanks so much for hanging out today. Appreciate it. Entrepreneurship episode 22. Any final thoughts, Mr. Regan?
I think subscribe to everything that we have going on, and subscribe
Yeah, subscribe.
to Dr. Squatch Soap.
Thanks, Jack.
Thanks,
Thank you.
guys.